Well, I came on board in 2003, and honestly, I had never really made much Riesling coming from California for 16 years. And so coming up and seeing Riesling as our number one varietal, I needed a really steep learning curve about the varietal. And imagine having a gentleman by the name of Ernst Loosen as your mentor, walking into a new job and creating these Rieslings. So literally the second day on the job, I was in the vineyard with Ernie, walking Riesling vineyards and learning about Riesling, not just about Washington Riesling, but just about the variety in general. And I think it was an amazing steep learning curve for me in 03, and I think for Ernie too. When we first started the project back in 1999, I don't think even the people that were here and Ernie didn't quite understand where the project was headed or what style of wine they could make. And I think over the 10 years, we keep refining the style. And the number one way we're refining it really is by vineyards, by vineyard choice, and by picking the right vineyards, the right spots to grow Riesling. In the first couple of vintages, actually, 99, 2000, it was actually more of a majority of warmer climate, and even Coal Creek, which Coal Creek, as you probably know, is not very cold.
Right.
Pretty hot site. And so those first couple wines were a little more the traditional apricot-y, a little bit riper style. And then as we found cooler sites, higher elevations, first in the Yakima Valley, and now recently, the last 3 or 4 years, up toward this Quincy area, what we're calling, I think, Ancient Lakes, someday might be an AVA up there, we're finding what we think are even better sites to make this visionary Riesling that Ernie and I have, which is that crisper, leaner, more mineral style, more lime and mineral than it is apricots and peaches like some of the more warmer climate Riesling is.
Tell me about the involvement with Wendy Stuckey now that she's a white winemaker. Is she involved in the Eroica project at all?
Oh yeah, she's diving headlong as well. I mean, she's coming from a whole different perspective. Number one, from Australia, but number two, she'd made Riesling her whole career, and it's her passion, so a little bit different angle. Matter of fact, that's kind of how I recruited her here, was because of Riesling. You know, Wendy and I actually met back in 1992 at Chalk Hill in California, and we've always kept in touch. The Riesling Rendezvous a few years ago, saw her name on the list. We had basically had a Sunday brunch up in the Space Needle. Almost sounds too perfect, but I kind of talked to her about Washington, and when we talked about Riesling, I could just see her ears really, really perk up. And she decided it was time for a change for her, and so boom, we got her here to Washington. And for her, I mean, you can talk to her as well, but it's been a little bit different kind of adjustment. She's always known Riesling, okay, but she talks about now, because of the RS acid fruit balance, it's kind of like making Riesling in a third dimension. Whereas before, most of the wines she made were very much on the dry side. Now, obviously, we have this portfolio of Rieslings from a dry style, which we make, all the way to Trockenbeer and Auslese the sweet, and we have everything in between. So it's a much, to me, more beautiful rainbow of Rieslings to work with here in Washington. I think she really, really appreciates that.
And you bring up these other Eroica wines because it's not just the one that everybody sees on the shelf or on TV shows. There's a couple of other Eroica products out there.
There is. There was one that started right with the regular Eroica called Singleberry Select. And Ernst's idea at the time was, he saw our amazing botrytis here in Washington. It's a beautiful, what we call a dry style of botrytis, because it is very warm and dry in the season. So the botrytis literally shrivels beautifully dry. He even gets jealous of the quality of our botrytis. He saw that and said he thinks Washington could produce a world quality style of botrytis, 100% shriveled botrytis berry style of wine. And so we started making a Singleberry Select back in 1999, right, with the Eroica off-dry style that we make. And in the last couple of years, the other thing we can do well here is ice wines in the right year. So we started, for Eroica, we also started making an ice wine in 2006. So we have an 06 and then we have an 08 ice wine. What's the nice thing about ice wine in Washington is that it doesn't happen every year. So it's more special when it does happen. And I've been lucky enough to be involved with 3 of them in my 6 years. So those are 2 other wines that we have. We want to be a little careful about keeping those very different style. We're not trying to confuse the consumer about the off-dry style of Eroica. We don't want to start making too many styles under the Eroica because we don't want to confuse the consumer.
Right. How many cases with the 08 Eroica? How many are produced?
2008 Eroica is 27,000 cases.
Okay, so it's fairly well available.
Yeah, that's enough wine to get around the country. It's not too much to where it's a huge, gigantic blend, but it's still less than 5% of all the Riesling that we make here at the Chateau. So it's still a very, very top slice of the Riesling pie, you might say, selection process to come up with the Eroica blend every year.
Now, you make probably more Riesling than anybody in the world.
For one brand and one location, I've been told that is true, yes.
Yeah.
And Ernie's even verified it from his German angle.
So, how has the Eroica experience affected the winemaking for all the other Riesling labels under Ste. Michelle?
I think working with Ernst personally, all of our Rieslings show a little bit of him and shows a little bit of our experiences with him. When I came on board, I had to learn fast too. And the idea with all of our Rieslings, and again, this is partly Ernie's influence on everything, is that we're looking for true varietal character. We're looking for clean. We're not looking for natural ferment, oaky, dirty. I mean, some of the Rieslings are being made in this more natural style, you might say. But for us, we stainless steel cold. We cold juice settle, get the juice extra clean. We want a really clean fermentation. Literally, we want the wine to taste like the grape did in the vineyard, and that's Ernst's viewpoint, and that's how we do the wines.
We talked a couple of years ago, and you were just starting to get a little bit of fruit out of the Lake Chelan area. Mm-hmm. Are you still doing that? And how's that project coming along?
We didn't talk about this beforehand, but actually, the Chelan Riesling for the first time made the Eroica blend in 2008. It's a very small amount of total grapes up there. And we're actually expanding from getting, last year we got about 10 tons of grapes. This year we're getting all the way up to 30. So we think a lot of it. I mean, there's not tons planted up there, but I think the quality and the style and that cool spot and that lake effect actually can be beautiful for Riesling. So we keep looking under every rock around the state to try and find other spots for Riesling.
What are your expectations as we taste through 10 years of Eroica here?
The expectation is, twofold. One is to see how beautifully Riesling ages. Because of its high acid, low pH, these wines can age very, very well. But two is it's more an evolution of the style and the vineyards than it is the aging of the wine. I mean, you're going to see how Riesling ages beautifully, and we can talk about the vintages and what grapes made it into each vintage and how the wine's evolving. But I think more importantly, it's how the project's evolving and how the vineyard sources in Washington State. I was asked the other day about in 10 years, what's going to be the biggest difference about Riesling than now? And I'm going to say, it's where we're growing the grapes. Right. We're still just beginning to understand within all of our state, all the higher elevation, cooler sites that we want for Eroica. We haven't even discovered some of the better spots yet, I don't think. So I think vineyard evolution is still number one.
A few days ago, I kind of caught you guys going through Prosser. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing you were scouting vineyards for the 09 vintage.
We were.
What did you see out there?
Ernie comes over every year, 3 or 4 times total, but this time of year, we look at the blocks, we talk with the growers, we look at the canopy, obviously just looking at vineyards and talking to our people that are growing the grapes. And what I saw 09 vintage, we got a little warm over there a couple weeks ago. I did see a little bit of sunburn. But one good thing about Riesling is it's very resistant to sunburn, and it's much further behind the other white varietals. I saw at our key Eroica blocks the best canopy to fruit balance I'd ever seen. Our growers are learning just like us. People that are growing the grapes for us, we come in and we're all trying to find that perfect harmony of fruit zone, fruit balance, and then canopy size. And I think that just like we'll learn how to make the wine better, they're learning how to fine-tune their vineyard better with each season to get that balance of fruit to canopy. Because I think we've talked before that Riesling, we don't want a tiny crop. We don't want, you always talk about like Pinot Noir getting one cluster per shoot, and Riesling we like a little bit. We want balance, but we don't want too little crop because then it ripens too fast. And the key to getting Eroica home and getting it in the blend is grapes that are ripening to like 21.5 to 22 bricks on October 25th. That's kind of like the perfect scenario to get that hang time flavor that Ernst always talks about. And I think the growers are learning that, and we're all learning together to get the proper balance of the fruit and the canopy to get the grapes home in the right time frame without getting too ripe too soon, but also not having too much fruit on because you still want concentration.